This review is for a mature rated game, so viewer discretion is advised. Survival horror has its place in the gaming world primarily due to the Resident Evil franchise that originally started in 1996.
While not the first horror game ever made, it set a benchmark for the genre, influencing games that are even psychologically different, like Silent Hill. Despite all this, the franchise did start to get repetitive a few years after its introduction, and on top of that, the camera, controls, and even gameplay didn't necessarily appeal to everyone. Enter Resident Evil 4, a game that is important not only to the series, but for the video gaming world.
Resident Evil 4.
Based on my own experience, I recommend Resident Evil 4 as an introduction for newcomers to the Resident Evil franchise. While certain aspects of the series are surprisingly well retained in this game, namely the story and the controls, you don't need to have experienced the Resident Evil franchise to understand these, though it's probably a bonus if you have. The story features Leon S. Kennedy, who previously was in Resident Evil 2, taking on a completely different mission to rescue the president's daughter Ashley Graham, who has been kidnapped by an enigmatically dangerous cult that resides mainly in Europe. Throughout this action-packed adventure, you control Leon as you slowly discover there is more going on than just a kidnapping. It's a typical Resident Evil story, but it's a story that's fairly compelling and easy to understand.
So the subject's name's Ashley Graham, right?
That's right. She's the daughter of the president. So try to behave yourself, okay?
Whoever this group is, they sure picked the wrong girl to kidnap.
The enemies that want you to die, and by you I mean Leon, differ drastically from the zombies that were pretty much the mainstay antagonist of past Resident Evil games. They are faster, bigger in number, and will try to ambush you while using a variety of weapons, such as knives and pitchforks. The way you fight these enemies is also different, and surprisingly user-friendly. You have a lot of control about how you aim your gun, whether it's an enemy's head, stomach, legs, and so on. It feels satisfying to make the right hit to let you attack an enemy the way you want it. However, there's one aspect of combat that is carried over from previous Resident Evil games that may annoy some veteran or newcomer. When you're aiming to shoot, you can't strafe, which may make you feel like a sitting duck. However, you will get used to this fairly quickly so that you almost can't imagine the game without it. Especially when it comes to tension, something that the series contains in spades no matter how action-packed the scenario may be. In fact, the whole aim-to-shoot aspect is something the series had never really done before and inspired many third-person camera action games in subsequent years. The camera was static in previous Resident Evil games, showing disorienting angles such as that from a ceiling or from the edge of a corridor. In Resident Evil 4, the camera angle is always behind you. You always move in the direction Leon's head is facing, and it's thankfully never counterintuitive. Just remember to master the quick turnaround control so you can see if there's any danger behind your back. The game also has several bosses to encounter, and these are gigantic, grotesque monstrosities. One of them even resembles the troll from The Lord of the Rings. These can be quite a challenge, especially on a harder difficulty. Make sure you stock up on ammo before these encounters. In saying all this, while the action rarely lets up, there are enough times for the player to take a breather, whether it's finding treasure or solving puzzles. Puzzles are easier than they were in past games. Maybe too easy, with the exception of one frustrating puzzle involving tiles that will very likely push you to look for online help. But at least it's not really a detriment to the game. What may potentially make the game a different experience for everyone, as well as encourage replayability, is the weapon upgrade system. You get money from enemies a lot of the time, as well as treasures you may have to go out of your way to find. Money is used to get new weapons, as well as upgrade them, with the help of a merchant who appears out of nowhere seemingly unscathed. Unlike Leon, do you want to use a magnum or mine thrower? Do you increase your shotgun's firepower or ammo capacity? Will this new treasure sell for enough money, or do I need to combine it with other jewels? Shall I try to challenge myself with just a pistol and knife? The game encourages a fair amount of experimentation, and the game's constant get from point A to point B progression doesn't get in the way of this. Combine all this with a variety of locations and extra things to do after the game is over, and you've got a game that will last you for quite some time. You'll want to go back to it after you've completed it. I have come this far and have not mentioned the production values. The Resident Evil series has been recognized for its powerful graphics, and this game is no exception. In fact, it might be one of the best looking games in the series, especially so on an HD remaster. The cutscenes look great as well, but don't get drawn into them or put the controller down. You may have to push a button while watching, or you may suffer an injury and or die. These are known as QuickTime events. The sound and music are exceptional and complement each area or scenario. The cues alert you to nearby enemies or dangers, or perhaps mislead you. The production values are indeed stellar. In saying all this, the faults of the game may purely be subjective. Aside from the aforementioned frustrating puzzle, controls that take time to get used to, not to mention the annoying escort scenarios with Ashley. It is possible fans of the series may not necessarily find this game scary enough, and will wish for tense camera angles and slower pacing with less of an emphasis on action, as well as the emphasis on avoiding combat and conserving ammo and items. However, it is also possible that you may appreciate the changes if you've indulged in the popular survival horror series before. In fact, if my personal experience is any indication, the changes in Resident Evil 4 make it a good introduction to those who are curious about the genre or series, but have never really played it before. With the benchmark of third-person moving and shooting, variety of locations and enemies, and consistently compelling action, as well as its cheesy and familiar yet compelling story, Resident Evil 4 is a game that must be played. Based on its popularity, it has been released on many systems. Many people, myself included, thought it was initially going to be a GameCube exclusive, so you should have no trouble finding yourself a copy.
You okay?
Leon, what's gonna happen to us?
Don't worry. We got into this mess. We can get out of it.